Schiff.
Yep.
Yeah, I watched him a few times on the Rogan podcast, and yeah, I'm like, I need a Peter Schiff. I need my own Peter Schiff.
Yeah. Nice.
Share. Can you can share it on your page if you want as well, but do whatever you feel.
Okay. My dog's in the background barking in her sleep.
Oh, really? It's
Yeah.
nap time. Yeah, my male cat will bother me from time to time. All right. Let me just get to the Zoom so I can see you. I forget. Do you know how to do with the split screen?
I don't.
So it's
I'm on the receiving end of Zoom, so I'm always passive in the experience.
gallery view. There we go. Got it. All right. So hello, everybody. We have two people on. So here we go. You want to start? You want to wait for people to pop on? You're just ready to go.
I'm ready to go.
All right. Let's do it. Hello, everybody. So this is the 0 Point Podcast number 4. My name is Richard Sandilands. Today we have the charting man, Dan McD. And he's an entrepreneur. He started his own business. I'm not sure how long ago. Did you say 5 years ago?
5 years.
5 years ago. It's called the Charting Guys, and you're a co-founder, correct?
Co-founder, yep.
Okay. So we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship and stock market and investing and really anything that just feels like appropriate and appropriate to talk about. So I guess I'd like to know how you got involved and interested in investing first. How long ago does that go back? Did you grow up wanting to do that, or did it just kind of fall into your lap?
Sure. So I always had a good sense of money in the sense that I was good at saving. And, I started a lawn mowing business in ninth grade and worked on getting some money that way. As far as my journey into the stock market back, we're probably talking 10 years ago, roughly. I was halfway through college and I read a book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes by Jack Herer. And that book is about industrial hemp and marijuana. And it taught me two very important lessons. The first was don't trust your government, because I can't trust a government that's doing this over a plant. And the second was there's money to be made in industrial hemp and marijuana. So from there, I really had two paths. It was like, okay, I'm either going to go to Canada where they're way ahead of us and I'm going to learn how to grow this plant and then apply that knowledge to the US when we start to follow along. Or I can do this thing while I'm still in college here and check out stocks. And so I started to put a little bit of money. I had saved up some money from those high school jobs. And I put a little bit of money at risk. And I said, all right, worst case scenario, I lose this money and I got to get a job right out of college like everybody else. And best case scenario, I can give myself a cushion and do what I want. And that was just when the tide started shifting. California voted for legalization, Prop 19, and it failed. But that was really the first step back in 2010, 2011. So I was fortunate enough to make a little bit of money and then realized, okay, I better figure out what I'm doing. And some people posting in forums, it was clear that some people knew what they were doing a lot more than others. Said, this guy with charts posting technical analysis, he's right more than everybody else. I'm going to, latch on to him to see exactly what he does, ask as many questions as I can. And from there, it just snowballed into, wow, I really enjoy this stuff. I have my brain is mathematically wired. I enjoy everything about it. And it's a lot to do with psychology and a lot to do with emotional control and things like meditation, and all this stuff can be applied to trading. And so from there, it was just 5 years of doing that on my own. And then we reached a point where we said, my business partner, I never met him And we started this company because I posted on Reddit, like, hey, marijuana penny stocks, money's growing on cheese. It's really easy to make money right now. Let me show you how. And I got a ton of hate mail. Yeah, you're full of it, scam, blah, blah, blah. But he messaged me and he was interested. So he was the first person I ever taught technical analysis and trading to. And then a couple of years later, we said, hey, let's start this company. And I actually met him for the first time in person at his wedding, I think maybe 3 years after we started the business.
That's funny. And so Reddit was the way that you guys met.
And
that is so funny.
It's all there still.
It's still, you should still look it up. The proof. Well, man, yeah. So I am envious because you're mathematically oriented. There's something about the way my mind works that when I see numbers and even just like looking at charts and stuff, I'm like, oh man. Do you feel like for someone to get involved in investing, they really have to kind of be turned on by the X's and O's of it, like the numbers of it?
It's not a requirement. It makes it easier for sure. If I can do some quick math in my head, it helps. It's a tool that I can utilize, but you don't have to. If you had a little calculator here and you want to do a little bit of math, that helps. I mean, if you don't like numbers and if you don't like charts, it's not going to work for you. And I'm definitely empathetic to that. So, when I look at someone who may be struggling financially, I don't look down upon them. Oh, you should, be more fiscally responsible. Absolutely not, because I know people's brains work so differently. And I just happen to have a brain that worked not only to be structured to excel at Western education in terms of memorizing for tests and all that, but I have a brain that the system was created that my brain thrives in that system. And I know other people have brains and personalities where that is not the case, and it's not fair. And they are no lesser of a person because of that.
Right. Well, I guess like one of the things that I feel like some conflict in myself about is like what's the timing of, like, are you looking at the chart all day? Are you really just watching it all day and then you make it an intuitive decision, like buy this, sell this, that type of thing?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a day trader. So just today I've made 8 to 10 trades, and I've been in and out. I haven't been staring at the screen, but that comes with a lot of experience. I put in tens of thousands of hours to this. Absolutely. And if I didn't have a balance, every time I've been doing this in depth this often, I've always been in a place where I can walk outside and hang out with some goats and chickens and go in the garden or do other things that allow me to instantly detach. Whereas if I were in an apartment building in a city, I would be absolutely insane at this point. It would not sustainable in any way, shape, or form. So it takes a ton of time. It takes a ton of computer time, and I'm very aware of how much I am sinking into this. And it's all about finding the balance.
Okay. All right. So I've heard this, and do you agree with this statement? The stock market is a graph of rich people's feelings.
Yeah, rich people's emotions. Rich people's emotions. It is such a giant game. It all started, a part of my story that I left out is, so I made some money in college. I had a cushion. I didn't have to get a job right out of college. So I went backpacking and road tripping and went around the country to national parks. And while I was in the middle of that with one of my buddies, the Occupy movement started. And I was just learning, again, distrust of the government. And I stayed on a little farm, part of the woofing program, where you go and you stay on a farm in exchange for room and board. And they were pretty hardcore activists. So they started, pumping us with documentaries, Gasland and all these documentaries where my mind was just being exploded. Like, wow, what is going on here? Occupy movement springs up. So then on the way back from the West Coast to the East Coast, we just hopped from Occupy to Occupy. I think I went to 8 different cities.
Wow.
And it was an incredible experience.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
People. I in the end though, I had my soul crushed. Like, well, what if this didn't do it? What can we possibly do? This is not fair. The banking system got bailed out. We paid for it. People don't understand. They're listening to the media narrative. They're throwing eggs at us and yelling at us. And they have been completely, they're on the side of big media. I lost all hope. And so I said, okay, I'm done fighting the system. I'm going to learn your game. I'm going to put in all my time and effort to learning your game and how you control the system. And I'm going to take my piece of the pie. And it's a giant game. It is a giant game of flashing numbers. And realizing that helps you so much. It's not real. None of it is real in terms of, the detachment. A stock can go up to $1 million as long as people are willing to pay $1 million for it. What it is, the stock market is the aggregate perception of all market participants and what they say is valuable or not valuable. And Bitcoin in 2017 was a great example of that. Bitcoin's going to be worth as much as people are willing to pay for it. And it's really hard to put a value on something like that. You know, people in the olden days, I say back in your grandpappy's market, they would look and say, okay, you know, Apple has this many phones and it's worth this much. And they're doing it by the books. But in today's day and age, with the information so rapidly changing and so readily available to everybody, it's a different stock market. This is not your grandpappy's stock market. It's a very different game. There's bots and high frequency trading going on that are instantaneously reacting to tweets. You know, if Donald Trump puts out a tweet,
yeah, they're reacting to tweets now. That's insane.
The bots and the algos will read that headline and react in split seconds, long before you even know what's happening.
Wow.
So it's all about limiting your risk, you know, using stop losses, which means if this level is hit, it instantly sells my position, and just learning the game and learning the emotions. And when there's euphoria, you know to be very cautious and take profits. And when there's a ton of fear, just like the COVID dump, everything collapsed. And anybody that bought during the COVID dump, anybody that bought housing during the 2008 collapse, they did really well. So it's all about recognizing those emotions, learning your lessons. I've learned all these lessons over the decade. You know, I've made all the mistakes. And as long as you learn from those mistakes and don't keep making them, that is how you can come out ahead.
Wow. Okay. All right. Just to break this into a duality, because the podcast that I did yesterday, we kind of got on this topic, but do you feel that good and evil are represented in the stock market? You know, the good and evil term, we can be flexible there, I guess. But like, is there businesses that are more like taking advantage of people and they're represented?
So I wouldn't say good and evil in terms of big picture, but you can zoom in and yeah, I mean, there's penny stocks where they're all scams, and there are people that knowingly are defrauding people all the time. It is the Wild West in terms of,
okay, it's, yeah.
There's scammers everywhere. And even in my line of work. So my line of work is, you know, someone who goes in front of the camera and says, I can teach you things. I can help you. And if you see other people that do this, you know, they've got their jet and their Lambo behind them, I can make you rich. And we take a very different approach. You know, I'm out there with goats or out in the garden saying, yeah, I can help you. You're not going to get rich unless you put in a ton of time and effort and hit a lot of lucky streaks. But it's a space that is full of scammers because there's so much money. There's money constantly. There's trillions of dollars flowing around every day, and people are just doing everything they can to try and get their piece. And there are a lot of scammers and a lot of dishonest people, but there's a lot of good people out there as well. And again, the first person that I ever learned from in that forum, he answered a ton of my questions, and I owe it's invaluable what he gave to me in terms of motivation to allow this to be my path.
You're like standing on his shoulders in some sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like oh man, I just had one that I was going to ask you. You brought up bots. Is there an artificial intelligence aspect to the stock market? And then I'll ask you the second. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. I can watch the chart and I can see a big spike in volume, which means a lot of shares are being bought and sold. And I can see it happen so quickly that I know, okay, news was just released and this is the bots that are reacting to that news. And then I go and I look and say, okay, what's the news? And then I get my head on straight as to what's going on. But you see it all the time. Correlations, you know, if Apple's going up, then that's going to help Facebook go up because they're both tech names. So there's constant correlations, constant bot and high frequency trading activity. Absolutely.
For humans, do you have to be a U.S. citizen in order to trade in the stock market, or is it just as easy as having capital? Or what's the prerequisite for being able to trade?
So there's some brokers that are only operating in the U.S., but people in Europe, you know, with our Chart Guys chat room, we've got 1,000 some members, and we got people all over the world. So they just have to choose different brokers. I use Fidelity. Someone in Europe's going to use Interactive Brokers. And you can get access to the U.S. markets because the U.S. markets have the most capital, and that's the most intriguing for people to be interested in.
I see. Now, are you familiar with stock markets like across the world? Is the U.S. really kind of like the main one that the world watches, and then other markets will will follow the US's trend in some sense?
In a large part, absolutely. But there are things that happen, with Brexit happening in the UK, that's its own little micro bubble as to what's going on. And there's always things that I focus on the US market. That's what I'm interested in. But
Right.
there's definitely markets that will correlate to the US market. But there are events that happen geopolitically that will lead to, Brazil being a good market to be getting in right now, or whatever else it is.
Yeah. So there are businesses on the market, but there's also like materials, right? Like gold and silver and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's not just a business or a material, or are there other things?
So you've got businesses, you've got commodities, you've got ETFs, which are bundles of stocks. So I can buy a tech sector ETF, and that's going to have Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft,
Oh, I see.
all of those names in it. And that's for diversification purposes. So you're not, putting all your eggs in one basket. And that's what the S&P 500 is. The S&P 500 is an aggregate of, the 500 top companies that meet certain criteria. So if I buy the S&P 500, rather than buying one stock where, bad news or good news can make that one stock go pretty volatile,
Wow.
I'm buying a grouping of 500 names.
Oh, I see. Yes, I thought the S&P was like its own market or something like that, but
It's just,
no, it's to aggregate it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a standard, if you're in the S&P 500, you're a legitimate company who's had profit for this many quarters, and there's criteria that you have to meet to get in.
Okay. Well, so I guess I'm trying to scan from when you were younger and then you got into it. What did you, as you were first learning, what were you the most disheartened about the system? And do you want to change it in some way, or what's your like motivation for being in it? Because I know it's not just money, right? It seems like you're really, passionate about something. Would you like to see a positive change? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But like I said, my soul was crushed, and I don't feel that I have the power to make significant change on a grand scale. Absolutely not. But I'm going to do my little part. And one thing that I've done recently with the whole Black Lives Matter movement is private prisons are a thing. You can buy stock in a private prison, and the more people they imprison, the more profits they make, and the more their stock price is potentially going to go up. And I think that is disgusting. So
Yeah.
I bet against them. I make money when they go down, and then I donate those profits. So that's a tiny little, microcosm way that I am trying to add more meaning to what I'm doing. Because if I were just trading by myself, again, I'm clicking buttons. I can't get behind that whatsoever. And that was part of the incentive for starting the Chart Guys, because I'm interacting with people all day long. And, I'm trying to help them, and I'm getting to know them, and we have similar interests. And so that human aspect was the game changer for me. And if you took that away, I probably wouldn't still be trading right now, because again, I would lose my motivation. Money only goes so far in terms of being a motivating factor.
Yeah, it needs to be meaningful in some way. But no, I'm interested with the Charting Guys courses, because you have courses that are out there. And I know, just for the people listening, that the first one on technical analysis is free. Is there a way that you could maybe just give us a little idea what that course is about?
It's pretty much just giving you the first exposure as to what is technical analysis. And we've always tried to keep a good balance of free content, putting out a ton of free content. I think we're up to 8,000 videos on YouTube over the last 5 years.
Oh yeah, the YouTube stuff is all free. I forgot about it.
Yeah, so tons of free YouTube stuff, and essentially just wanting people to get their foot in the door. And there are plenty of people that can't afford our services but still get value from what we put out. And then those that want to take a step deeper, we do have paid content that goes a little bit more in depth. And our membership is, I live stream multiple times a day, and pretty much a sports announcer, but for the stock market, in terms of highlighting what I'm seeing. And the tech sector is weak, but the financial sector is bouncing, and things like that. But
so you also do live streams on your YouTube page, or is that?
I did one today, actually. It's not as often, but the cryptocurrency space has been getting a little bit of life, so I jumped on for a live stream just for everybody. But as far as our paid membership, that's where the chat room access and multiple live streams a day covering the stock market.
Okay.
That's a part of that.
Yeah, that would be a valuable thing, I think. Just for the people who don't want to be watching it all the time, they might be able to just get your views on it, and then that might help them make their decisions. Um, so with the universal basic income debate, I guess I want to know how you see it and if it's even a good thing for our society, if it's even plausible, and what would that do to the stock market?
Yeah, I'm down to try anything in terms of, mixing it up a little bit. I don't know. I'm not well versed in broad macroeconomic policy. So, whether it would lead to inflation or deflation, that I know we're heading towards inflation with the amount of money that the Fed is printing. And what's been going on, the bailouts that the Fed has been doing during this time of COVID, it makes us look at that and say, wait, you can just print numbers this whole time. Why am I paying taxes? Why are we not funding all this other stuff if we can just make money up? So again,
Yeah.
it's just so clearly highlighting how giant a game all this monetary stuff is. It's intangible, and it's only the way it is because everybody agrees that it's this way.
Right.
And perception is such a significant factor of that. If everybody says, well, the dollar doesn't have a whole lot of value to me anymore, then it doesn't. It just doesn't because people say it doesn't. So all this money that's being printed is, in my opinion, and the fact that stocks are back at all-time highs when the economy clearly isn't, it's glaring red flags that, wait a second, this isn't what it seems.
Yeah, this isn't mirroring reality so much.
Yeah. So I was taught in college, basic economics classes, and they taught it in the sense that it was almost like physics. This is the way it is. These are the laws. And then you see the Fed, which is its own independent organization, not even a part of the government, that has deep roots with, big, powerful white families.
I was just going to say, is the banking cartels, is that an actual real thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's big money from the last, since the Industrial Revolution. Certain families have made more money than they know what to do with, and they've gained more power than they know what to do with. And it's just generational wealth. That's what the stock market dictates. It dictates generational wealth to mostly old white people. And that's where it stands. And that's why I was so intrigued by cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency was seeing a transfer of wealth to this young, tech-oriented demographic. And that's such a change up to the stock market that it was very refreshing to see.
So in order to get like the rules of the game to change, we have to go through politics and
yeah,
that's kind of, it's a bummer.
It's a bummer. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a big bummer. Honestly, I don't see significant change without collapse as far as, if whether the dollar collapses, whether the government collapses. I don't know what it's going to take, but I don't see, a smooth transition because we vote in the right people. I mean, the system is so ingrained that I just can't see it's possible, but I don't have that kind of hope.
Yeah, but it's going to take a majority of people to change their mind and actually make a decision and saying, like, just the way it is, we don't want to support that anymore. So,
but even then, I mean, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. But even you look at the marijuana issue, we've got the majority. We've had the majority for at least 5 years, and it's still Schedule 1. It's absurd. The majority doesn't matter because those that control the power are the minority, but because they have that power, I mean, the fact that marijuana is Schedule 1 when we just had COVID and all of these marijuana shops were labeled as essential businesses. Essential businesses, federally illegal, Schedule 1, no medicinal benefit by definition. It is so hypocritical. It makes absolutely no sense. And the majority is very clearly defined. The majority of Americans want legal marijuana. There is absolutely no doubt about that. And yet here we are with no changes yet, no significant changes.
So yeah, for some reason I'm getting two questions at a time. That's not gonna work. The relationship between the Treasury and the Fed, I don't really understand.
I don't either.
Okay, all right. Well, so I mean, because I thought there was some news about the U.S. Treasury absorbing the Fed or absorbing their power.
In my understanding, that's more of a rumor and more of a potential conspiracy theory as to what could end up be happening. I have not seen anything that would, I mean, anytime there's going to be a major shift in monetary policy, major shift, it's going to come as a surprise. So I can't really comment as far as from, having any kind of experience or knowledge on that subject. I know that the Fed has had a stranglehold on the global economy because the dollar is the standard for the global economy. And I know that they are probably not going to let that go without a massive event, a massive kind of collapse.
War or something like that. So can you take us through when we were on a gold standard and then we went to, I'm not sure what to call it after that.
Funny money.
Funny money. And then, more of an abstraction, like more of an abstraction money. Do you see that us going back to gold standard?
It's possible. I think it would take a dollar collapse for that to be the case. But back when you had the gold standard, you had actual tangible things being valued. So if a bank is holding $100 million, they've got $100 million of gold to back up those paper notes, because that paper in itself has no value. Right. So when we left the gold standard, we went into this intangible, made up game where it's just, you can say a number. You can't print $1 trillion if it has to be backed by gold. But in this new system, the rule makers, the Fed and the banking cartels, can do whatever they want. They can say, oh, $1 trillion, great, let's put that into the economy. And there's nothing behind it. Again, it's perception, because everybody says, okay, this is a piece of paper, this has value. That's the only reason it has value. And if everybody tomorrow woke up and said that piece of paper doesn't have value anymore, then it doesn't.
Yeah. So literally the collapse of the dollar equals people just deciding it doesn't have value for them anymore.
To a degree. Well, it could be a number of things. It could be inflation, where you just pump so many dollars into the system that the $10 that I have is now only going to get me $5 worth of bread at the store. And that's when you see grocery prices start going up, which is what you're seeing over the last couple of months, because the Fed has been pumping so much money into the market. And so things cost a lot more money, and you see it. It used to cost a nickel for ice cream back in the day, and now it costs $4. That's inflation. And we could eventually reach a point where it gets so absurd. And you see it in other countries, and whether it's Venezuela or whoever else, where, $1 billion in their currency doesn't buy you a full basket of groceries, because it's just so valueless, because there's so much of it. So that's what a lot of people are looking towards right now. And that's why gold is on the verge of all-time highs. And it's because there is so many dollars being pumped into the market right now that people are saying, wait a second, you can't keep doing this forever. And there is going to come a day of reckoning. And that's where people look to gold and look to Bitcoin and look to other assets to potentially hold value, because they're finite in a world of infinite dollars.
Yeah. I don't really understand the intrinsic value of gold. Like, that's also just kind of a thing. Like, it appeals to some. It seems like it appeals to most people, I guess.
So there are some uses for it in industry, whether you're putting it on little computer boards or motherboards or whatever it is. So, that's not the reason that it has value. The reason that it has value is, honestly, again, perception. It's always had value. We go back 10,000 years, and it was very valuable to early societies. Maybe 10,000 is a little bit too far, but it's always valuable to early societies, and that has carried over to a certain degree. The value has fluctuated significantly. Back in the 70s, it was maybe $200, $300 an ounce, and right now we're pushing $2,000 an ounce. And again, it's all perception. It's all people looking at the current economic environment and feeling that maybe having some gold is a hedge against this dollar. And as far as, what the argument against gold and for Bitcoin is, what am I going to do with this lunky piece of metal? Can I put my net worth in this metal, and then what, do I carry it around with me? And how is it divisible? If I've got a gold bar, but I want to buy groceries, how do I break that up? So it's a store of value, but and in terms of why, again, it's something I can't really answer. It's just human nature.
Yeah, just maybe as like people get more informed, because to me, the universal ledger aspect of Bitcoin is more valuable to me than a metal.
Yeah.
So
And that's because you know enough about the subject, and the more people that learn about the subject and see that light, then they buy Bitcoin and the value of Bitcoin goes
yeah.
up. So again, it's all just perception of individuals.
Can you explain the universal ledger and why, how that would change things, and why that would be more valuable to the little individual, you know?
So it gives you the power to be your own bank, essentially, in the sense that,
Oh,
right now I've got my money at Bank of America, and if the system collapses, or if everybody decides they want their money out of Bank of America, maybe they can't pay me. I have to trust Bank of America to give me back my money, and they could just throw their hands up and say, sorry, the dollar collapsed and there's nothing we can do. But with Bitcoin, I hold that value, and
yeah.
I can take it off my computer and put it on my little, USB thing, and I can have that in my hand, and now it's mine, and I'm in complete control of it, and I can put it back in the computer and then send it to and from different places. And you also don't need an intermediary. If I want to pay you right now, I go through PayPal or I go through Venmo. That's a third party company that we have to involve in our business. Whereas just with cryptocurrency, just me to you, I can send a transaction and it will show up, on your computer, that you can then take off your computer and have in a little drive. It cuts out the middleman. It gives the individual more power over their assets.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we need to educate people, but I guess people have to be interested and ask questions first. But
It's a generational thing to a large
yeah,
degree as well. You have the older generation where this is the system it's always been and it's been fine. Here I am and it's been working fine for me. So that's the way it's going to stay. And then you have the newer generation that sees the rapid change in technology and sees, this makes a little bit more sense. Maybe we should be paying attention to this. And just like anything, the marijuana issue is a generational thing. As more older people die and more younger people reach voting age, we see the change take place. So that's what's going to take place in the cryptocurrency space, in my opinion, just a slow adoption.
do you think you could take us through just a little bit of history of like when Bitcoin was introduced and just, I mean, obviously it's volatile and still a volatile stock, but and then you said just recently, like in the last month, it was piquing people's interest again.
So Bitcoin was created, I believe, around 2010. I don't have the exact date, but it was in response to the 2008 crisis and
Okay.
the clear glaring, we can't trust banks because banks were, messing around and extremely dumb in everything that they were doing, extremely greedy, and a few people concentrated wealth to themselves, and everybody else got screwed because every single citizen had to pay for the bailout that resulted in their terrible business practices. So Satoshi created, and Satoshi is an unknown figure. Everybody, it's maybe this guy, maybe this guy. Nobody
Oh,
knows who it is. And they
the
created,
mystique of it.
yes, they created Bitcoin to have this idea, and it just slowly caught on. And so it's now, it went into crazy euphoria where it went up to all-time highs and then it dumped really hard. It's extremely volatile because, again, you can't put a tangible value on it. There's no way to put a tangible value on it. It's only worth as much as someone is going to pay you for it. And as perception shifts, it has more value as people understand, okay, I want to be in control of my own money. I don't want to have to go through banks, but it's a very slow road and there's a ton of bumps along the way. So it's a roller coaster in terms of, the price action of it. And what I'm looking for now is, with gold on the verge of all-time highs and doing nothing but going up for 3 months, and silver, I'm looking for that narrative to shift to cryptocurrency. So right now, CNBC and all these talking heads are putting out headlines of, gold's raging, and the narrative is the dollar is being diluted. There's tons of dollars being printed and people are hedging by going into gold and silver. And that same argument applies to Bitcoin as well. So I'm watching for the potential that the hype in the gold and silver market will eventually spill over in the near term into the cryptocurrency space as well.
And really the only way to have it stabilize is the perception of people.
To have it stabilized, you need to have, in the stock world, they have market makers. So market makers have large amounts of shares, And they're saying, okay, you're a buyer, you're a seller, I'm moving this around, I'm giving you these shares, and they're making the market. And the more you have of that, the more stable things get, the more, dollar volume. And that's what's needed in the cryptocurrency space, just a lot more interest and a lot more people buying and holding. But even
Buying
then,
and holding.
if you buy and hold, all you're doing is limiting the supply. So that could make it volatile as well, because if there's 100 coins and I'm holding 80 of them, there's now only 20 that are being traded, and those 20 are dictating the price. So that in itself can lead to some more volatility as well. Pretty much the more liquidity you have in something, if something has $1 trillion market cap, if it's worth $1 trillion, it's not going to fluctuate nearly as much as something that has $1 billion of market cap.
Wow. Okay.
One other note on the cryptocurrency space. You have Bitcoin, and that's the granddaddy. That's what it all came from. But you have 1,000 other projects, more than that all do different things. And it's a very vast world in terms of what the possibilities are for this space to develop into. But I just want to distinguish that there's a lot going on that is more than just Bitcoin. And I can't go in depth in terms of the fundamentals. There are people that are way more knowledgeable on the subject than I am. But what is being worked on behind the scenes does have the potential to revolutionize a lot of different industries.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, what if like the U.S. Treasury or the Fed just came out and said that Bitcoin is the currency that we're using?
That would lead to an insane, huge spike in price as everybody rushed hand over fist. If they were to do something like that, they would create their own cryptocurrency.
Oh, they wouldn't use Bitcoin. They would create their own. Yeah.
They need control, and you can't have the control of Bitcoin. So they would create their own, and then they would say, this is what we're using now. And if you exchange your $10,000, we're going to give you this many of this thing now. And it's probably going to that space. Just a couple of days ago, there was a headline that banks are now allowed to be custodians of Bitcoin, which pretty much means that, they're going to be allowed to hold it for you, and that defeats the purpose to a large part. There's Bitcoin maximalists who say, what's the point of that? That's just giving them the power again. I want to be in control of my own thing. But in terms of widespread adoption, it's a very complicated space. And if you're going to get, a 65-year-old baby boomer in on the cryptocurrency space, if they can do it through their bank that they've been trusting for 40 years, it's going to be a little bit easier of a transition, as opposed to, well, here's a YouTube video, go figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you heard that like the stock market could change if we somehow go to space and mine elements like from space? What would like the invention or the discovery of a new element do to the market?
So any new technology can drastically change things. If we go and mine an asteroid and all of a sudden there's twice as much gold, then gold's value is half as much by definition, because there's twice as much of it. So it would definitely increase, or it would definitely significantly change values of different assets. And I just had this conversation today where, the stock market forever has been valued as the most important thing is profit. The main driver of everything is profit. A company can fire a bunch of people and the stock will go up because their operating costs are going to go down. And it's viewed in that completely inhumane way where you're not thinking about the 10,000 people and their families. It's a good thing because profit's going to be higher. So that's the formula that stocks have been trading with. And my question is, okay, what if we get the perception shift? What if the newer generations do not value profit as the underlying most important factor? And what if environmentalism and social, well-being start to become valued more? And maybe, this stock that is worth $10 billion, but doesn't do any of those things, and this stock is only $8 billion, and they do all these things, well, I'm going to go with this company. So that's what we're seeing with Tesla to a certain degree right now. And I loved watching Tesla happen, because for those who don't know, Tesla gained a huge amount of market cap and the stock price soared over the last few months. And essentially it's it's now worth like the 3 top other car companies combined or something. And
Wow.
what it was is the whole time over the last few years, the old school stock people who look at it and say, well, I'm reading the books and profit margins this and cost of goods sold, and they're doing all their old formulas in the grandpappy's market. So they're saying this is what it's worth, and it is worth too much. So we're betting against it. And the new generation is saying, I don't care what it's doing right now. I'm looking 10 years out. And I know that oil and these cars, this is not going to be the way we're doing things in a decade. It's going to be electric vehicles. So I don't care what they're saying, what the value is right now. I'm investing for that future. And so all the old school grandpappy market folks lost a ton of money shorting this name, and all the younger generation are coming in and just buying it.
Big swing.
Saying, yeah, I don't care what the value is. I'm looking 10 years out, and there's going to be, 10 times as many Tesla cars on the street, and there's going to be charging stations everywhere. And we're going to be transitioning away from oil and from gas vehicles. And I want to be on board for that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a positive thing. Yeah. How are you on time? Do you need to?
I'm good.
A few more minutes?
10 minutes, whatever.
Okay. Sounds good. So look, I guess, where do you get your news about this stuff? And like, who do you trust? Do you just trust like a ledger somewhere, or are there names that you trust, like their opinions?
Yeah, sources matter for sure, who it's coming from. And in today's day and age, there's fake news everywhere. I mean, Trump coined the term, but in terms of, you can put out a fake headline and the bots will react to that headline and the price will react to it. And you have to be careful of that. So with the chat room of 1,000 people, we have 1,000 eyes with all their own sources, and we're just compiling it all in one space. So that's, one easy way to stay on top of things. But honestly, the news matters because I'm a technical trader. The chart and the price action matters more to me than news. So I will sometimes trade companies. I have no idea what they do. And I'm just looking at the price and I'm in and out in a short enough time where none of that matters to me. So if you're, and the reason that news matters less to me is because a lot of news will hit overnight and it will affect what happens the next day. Whereas I want to be all out, all cash by the end of the day and sleep like a baby, not having to worry about anything, and start every new day with a fresh, clean slate.
Oh, I didn't think of that. Yes. Yeah. For some reason, that was in the back of my mind. Like, how do you know what could happen overnight? But
you don't.
The way to combat that is to get all your money out at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's the way that's worked for me. And some people, again, can't do that. They can't pay attention enough to be able to go in and out and in and out. That Agile Leap. I want to be agile, and that being agile means being cash, and then I can go to Bitcoin, and then I can go to gold, and then I can just move really quickly around to whatever's happening, as opposed to being entrenched in a position and having to ride these waves. I can't imagine if I had my net worth and retirement over the last 40 years of working in a retirement fund and had to watch that dump for COVID and like sit through that I cannot imagine doing that. And tens of millions of people did that, and it's insane.
Well, a good thing you learned. Can you touch on the whole gasoline and what this Trump administration has done with that? Because has there been some pretty drastic changes in the oil market with Trump? Okay.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily attribute it to Trump. I would attribute it to COVID in terms of what we've been seeing recently. We reached a point where oil went negative. So I'm going to try and explain this as easily as I can. So there's things on commodities called futures contracts, and you can pay. I can say, okay, I'm going to buy this contract, which gives me the right to buy oil at $30 a barrel in September. And that allows me, let's say I'm a business. If I'm a giant business and I have to make business decisions based on how much the cost of oil is going to be, by buying that futures contract, I'm locking in the price. And if the price is higher than $30 in September, I made a good decision. And if the price is lower, then I made a bad decision. But it allows me to have a certainty. This is how much I'm going to spend on oil. And we reached a point where nobody was using oil. Everybody was staying home. And there was so much supply of oil, there was literally nowhere to put it. You had tankers sitting around the coast of the country full of oil with nowhere to put it. And we reached a point where the the current futures contract for that month, I think it was either March or April, it went negative where you could literally be paid to store oil.
Wow.
So I could buy 10 barrels of oil, and if I had a place to store it, they would pay me money for taking those 10 barrels of oil. And I don't know if that's ever happened before. I've certainly never seen anything like it, but it was just this massive shock to the balance of supply and demand for oil, and prices went crazy. And when that happens, some people make a ton of money and some people lose a ton of money.
Yeah. Wow. It's interesting stuff. So with this year, 2020, and the election coming in November, can you tell like how an election year affects the stock market and the trends?
So you definitely need to be paying attention to polls, although last election told us polls.
Oh, the polls really?
Can be wrong. Well, because the market's all about probabilities. What is the probability that this is going to happen? And so the polls help us gauge probability. Who's going to win? So it's the kind of thing where if Trump wins, private prison stocks are going to go up. And if Biden wins, they're going to go down. It's as simple as that. So they've been trending down recently because Biden has been increasing his lead in the polls over the last couple of months. And it's just constantly watching that. The marijuana sector has huge fluctuations based on, political probabilities, because that's such a political hotbed topic in terms of, such a significant difference. And Biden came out and said, if I'm elected, federal legalized medical marijuana, which is not, best case scenario, but we'll take it. It'll definitely change things. It would remove it from Schedule 1. There would be massive changes in the MJ space. But to go back to your
perception
question,
of it, yeah.
Yeah, to go back to your question, it's polls that we have to look to determine probabilities, because we don't have a ton else in terms of knowing who's the general population going to vote for, because we're all in our own little bubbles. And my social media feed is going to make me think that one thing's happening, and someone else's is going to make them think the opposite is happening.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's such an interesting time to be alive. There's a lot of fear, but I don't know. I see a lot of good things that could happen. Yeah, I don't know what else I could ask you. That's just so much information for me to take in,
It's a lot, yeah.
Well, so someone who doesn't have any knowledge, you would say that technical analysis course is a good place to start, and the YouTube channel.
So yes, I don't want to give anyone the misrepresentation that you can just take some courses and be a trader. If you want to be a trader, you need to treat it like I want to be a lawyer or I want to be a doctor.
Really something to commit to, yeah.
You're going to put in years, you're going to put in 10,000 hours, then you can be a trader. Now, there's another group of people that realizes I can't put in that kind of commitment, but I want to learn more so that I have a better understanding and I can still make smart decisions with my money, and it doesn't have to be an everyday kind of thing. And so for that, I would say, yes, absolutely. Hit the podcasts by finding some people that have some really good insight, or take the technical analysis just to understand how the game works, the inner workings, and what a chart is. How do I use a chart to be able to dictate, making money? And it's basically just probabilities. If I buy here and I stop out, if it drops to here, I'm risking 10 cents. And if I sell up here, it's 50 cents. So my risk to reward is 5 to 1. And if I get stopped out 4 out of the times, I lose. But if I get that one time, it's all worthwhile. So it's really just, it's like that in terms of what I do, but there's many different ways to play this game. So it's the kind of thing where, I talked with a group of friends, financial conversation, it's something we don't really talk about. You don't talk about your salaries with friends. You don't talk about what you're doing with your money. Yeah. And they want it to be that way. I mean, we're seeing a shift as well, where it was the suits, and the suits know the game and they put in all the time and effort, and you can't understand this. It's too complicated. So give them your money. They'll take the fee, and that'll be that. When now the internet is saying, no, you can learn anything that you want. You can absolutely do this yourself if you want to put in the time and effort. And that's the big change that's been going on in the financial world over the last 10, 20 years.
Wow. So the last few questions. What's your advice to someone who's starting their own business? That may be a big question there, but I don't know if you could just rant on that. But especially an online business, I guess, because the Charting Guys is pretty much an online business, correct?
Yeah.
And maybe all businesses.
To correct you, it's the Chart Guys, no ing.
Oh, sorry, the Chart Guys.
No worries.
Yeah.
So it's the two most important things for our success has been, number one, establishing a community where everybody's welcome. You know, troublemakers that clearly are not on the same path as us, we just boot them and give them their money back right away. I don't want your money. The customer is not always right. You're not a good fit. I don't like your toxic attitude. Here's your money. Thanks for your interest. And keeping that, our mindset has made the community an awesome group of people and very helpful. Everybody wants to help each other. And that supportive mindset, I mean, you surround yourself with entrepreneurs in your life, or you surround yourself with that kind of positivity, it makes a huge difference. So creating a community that people can rally around. And the second is being as genuine as you can. And I underestimated the ability that people would be able to recognize that I'm being genuine. You know, I'm not having to defend myself. People can see from my daily videos, you know, they've been following me for years. They know a lot about my life, and that has built up a trust. They trust me. You know, a couple times someone has run into me at an airport or at a music show and recognized me, and it's like I'm their best friend, like, because they've been watching me. They know who I am. So they can recognize being genuine. If you are genuine and you create a community based around whatever product or service you have, that is the starting point. And content creation is always king. When we started, I didn't want to do social media, but I enjoy it. I'm interacting with people all the time, and I'm answering questions and trying to help them. And, you know, at the end of, one thing that I've been doing is at the end of all my stock videos is I'll put a nature clip, or, you know, show people my garden. And that's been an end of video theme to contrast the dry stock world. And that balance has gained a lot of attention as well. Doing something different. Again, I'm not pointing at my private jet and my Lambo saying, I'm going to make you rich. We do it in a very different way. And that stands out to people as well. So I would say community, consistent content creation. I've been working 7 days a week for 5 years. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I love it. And I wake up on Saturday morning and the first thing I want to do is come record a video. And I'm very fortunate to be in that place. But again, I have put in so much time to get to this point, but it doesn't feel like work because I enjoy it. So
yeah, you enjoy it. Well, yeah, you're clearly on like an authentic path. So this authentic and genuine, you said genuine, that energy comes out and people love that. I mean, people want to be a part of that as well. So yeah. Well, thank you so much. I hope you can come back on, because I mean, who doesn't have infinite questions for you, right?
Yeah, I'd love to. I was watching you start this podcast from the you know, the sidelines here, and I think it's great. I encourage everybody to take the step to start something and to put effort into something. And who knows, I never in a million years would have thought that the chart guys would be where we are now from where we started. So why not give it a shot? Absolutely. And keep at it. And sometimes it'll take off, sometimes it won't, and you'll pivot and do something else, but it's always worth a try.
Right. Exactly. Well, thank you so much. And I'll definitely be in touch to get you back on. All right.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care, man. Thanks.
Have a good one.
See you later, everybody.